You're listening to SuperPower Up with multidimensional master, superpower expert, and former counterintelligence agent, Tonya Dawn Recla. If you're ready to disrupt reality, then sit down, strap in, and prepare to experience the show that proves there is no spoon.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, your superpower expert, and I have a treat for you all today. We have with us Karen Elkins. She's one of our newer hosts for the show Mystical Science. And super excited about this show. She brings to the table and to our conversations in the network this amazing interweaving of all of these concepts, very Renaissance-esque in the sense that it touches everything, which is, the nature of source, right? It touches everything, spirits in all things. And so we can't, hyper focus on one thing and refuse to find the divine in others, right? Either it's in everything or it's in nothing. And Karen has created this beautiful gift to the world in the form of a book. And I hesitate to even call it a book because it's not a book, it's an experience. And it's this beautiful depiction, excuse me, it's called InsideOut, Revealing the Mysteries of Creation. And it's this absolutely beautiful depiction of this walk through creation. I won't even say life, because I think sometimes we water down life to be like our day-to-day, but truly all of life, right? The entire existence and how it's all interconnected. And so she's come on the show today to share about this experience in writing the book. And I know so many of you can relate to this, like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but this is what I'm doing, and that kind of being guided and compelled, if you will, to step into these big spaces that don't make any sense, right? They're not real logical spaces, which is kind of proof that we're stepping into a way of beingness that isn't supposed to make sense from that old construct. And so it's okay when we don't totally understand it. But today we're talking about diving into creation, the Inside Out book experience. And Karen, I'm not going to keep talking about her. Let's talk with her. So please join me in welcoming this amazing phenom, Karen Elkins, to the show. Karen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the show, The Mystical Science. It's I'm bringing you people that are in the book, making them come alive and giving them a voice.
It's so fascinating when all of these pieces come together. And really, the rest of your subtitle of the book is, giving people the wisdom to live their lives consciously connected, right? And so much of what you stand for and what you present is in alignment with our network and our way of beingness. It just felt like a really great fit. And so I'm super excited that you chose to play with us. And where I want to dive into this is you do a great job at the beginning of the book. And for those of you who haven't seen it, we'll put pictures of it up on the site, but you really do owe it to your eyes to have this like scrumptious journey through creation and the visual kind of ecstasy that it creates. And in the beginning of it, Karen does a great job of really sharing that experience, right? But Karen, I'd love to hear from you kind of in alignment with our superpower conversation. Like, how did Source communicate this book to you? And in what within you was like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. I'm going to follow this, Can you share that experience with us?
Yeah. Actually, I was woken up at 4:00 in the morning with a big booming voice, and it said, "Get out of bed, you're doing a book." And I've never had that quality of voice since then. But it was interesting because I'm kind of looking at myself going, really? Doesn't he know I'm dyslexic? It's like poor Moses who had to lead a flock and he stuttered. And it's like, you okay? So I went and wrote the outline, and then I sat there for a bit and left it. And over the course of a year, I had met a lady who I started, and it was I met a lady who I started bringing top-notch speakers into Vancouver with her. We started partnering. And through that, I started thinking, okay, I got to do this magazine because not everybody's going to know who everybody is. So I picked up my little Mac and started playing. I'd never done a magazine. It's like everything I've done in my life. It's like I started an ad agency and I'd never even done an ad. I started a school and I'm certainly not educated in that. So I've gotten my degrees in the hot seat by just stepping in, making the mistakes, fixing them, and evolving myself. So this was no different. So after I had done a few magazines, and I, because I was doing people like Gregg Braden and the guy who did the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Luis, people like that, and anybody that was in What the Bleep we hosted up there, I had access to the best in that field. So that was awesome. That was a really good beginning. So I said one day, since I've done the magazine, let's go back and find that outline for the book. And I, because I am dyslexic, I paint the pictures. I used to do it in another radio show years back, and I'd read a lot of books, but if you can't see it and a picture says 1,000 words, I thought, okay, God, so let's do the picture thing. So over the course of the time, I just kept evolving, and I kept listening. And there are times when my little busy mind would say, oh, I'm tired, I shouldn't be tired. It's like, oh yeah, he wants to talk to me. So I'd go lay down. And then the mind would begin to quiet, and everything that I'd been processing started like feeling like a deck of cards that were sort of like falling into place. And I will honestly tell you, I did everything that could have been wrong as far as making a book. I went and gathered images that were like free stock images, not even thinking that because they were free, why should I document them? And then it's like, then I had to go back and find them, and then I didn't find them. But you know what the fun part was? Even through all the mistakes, it led me to one more piece of the puzzle. And that's in itself pretty darn magical. I mean, you have to stay with it. You have to, I can't even tell you how many boo-boos, how many obstacles, how many whatever, but Spirit calls, you answer.
Well, and I think that what you depict in such a beautiful way, and this is why you and I are kindred spirits, that was very much my walk in building out this network, and it didn't make a lot of sense. And I was like, I don't really know, but it made total sense. And in a weird way, in an abstract way. And so I know that the thing that people butt up against a lot, because we hear it, right? We hear from you all, like, what are the struggles? What's happening? Like, yeah, it's great, but gosh, I wish I had that much faith in Spirit. Like, why do you think that you were able to take what was showing up as just fatigue, right? And not go into stories around it other than, oh, maybe God wants to talk to me. I mean, that's not a logical leap that most people make. What is it that, why you? Why were you able to do that?
After you kind of lay down, you think you're just having more of a senior moment, to be honest. and then you realize you're constantly getting downloads. And then you go, oh, well, this is not logical for me to be tired at 1 PM. Okay, I'll just go shut my mind off for a bit. And so just by sheer volume and numbers and downloads, and at that point in time I was actually getting a lot of poetry coming through. So it was it's listening, it's paying attention. And then the more I think my question was, as a kid, was, how does God create? And until I actually started the school for the kids, that I got to see again through their eyes of wonder. And then when I started looking at creating curriculum that was more global and theme-based, I started seeing the connections between cultures and philosophies. Where most of us see division, I saw connection. And through that was the beginning of paying attention. And at this point, I've done 60 magazines, and I've hosted probably 300 people over the course of that time. So all of that has very deeply enriched my life. There were people that were well known and people that were not. And genius comes everywhere, and it comes in many different forms. And I love this part. Everybody had a question. And what you're paying attention to is their piece of the thread in the journey. And then what you do is, because I am dyslexic, the gift of it is seeing pattern connects. Now, I will tell you, some people who are in the book don't necessarily agree with how I've totally weaved it, but at least it's the beginning of a much deeper conversation that we can all have. And actually, what I've discovered over the course of the time of looking at more science is the things that I intuit. I've been right on, and the stuff is coming true. So I'm saying, thank you, God. I don't have your degrees, and I got my degrees in the hot seat, and my butt got burned a few times. But hey, but it is when you listen, and if you think about it, people who pay attention. I mean, like Einstein says, all I want to know is the thoughts of God. And people like Tesla are saying, when his mother died, as I said to you, and the other thing is, I could still hear the voices. So there is a connect across dimensions, as you would say. So you just got to pay attention.
Yeah. I love that. You've said so much in that. I want to dive into that more deeply. Before we go to break, let's tell people where they can go and get the book. Like, where can we send them?
If you go to InsideOut.com, it'll lead you to the book, to the magazines, and to all the different threads that I've evolved, which is abundant.
Yes, no, yeah, absolutely abundant. Well, I'm so excited to dive in further here, folks. Go check it out. It's such a beautiful, beautiful book. Really, really something else. And like I said, it's an experience, which I love, because to me, Karen, that's everything that you embody, is this idea of like, you're not going to do it like everybody else, and you're not going to do it in that traditional way, in the linear way. And of course, as you so eloquently speak to, the gift of the dyslexia is that you can't. I think that for some of us, we had to be hobbled a little bit to force us to, rather than keep trying to fit into the world, look at like, well, maybe the world can look differently. And that inquiry in and of itself creates potentiality. So folks, you're not going to want to leave this. This is a fantastic conversation. We're going to dive in even more deeply with Karen about this miraculous book experience she's created. And we're talking about diving into creation, the Inside Out book experience. Stay with us. We will be right back, folks. Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, Executive Director of SuperPower Experts. And we want to thank each of you for making SuperPower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz. And as Neva Lee Recla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world. Awesome. We're back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're listening to the Disrupt Reality Show on SuperPower Up Network. I'm Tonya Dawn Recla. We're talking today with Karen Elkins about diving into creation, the Inside Out book experience. This thing that we call a book. It's kind of like the wardrobe, right? You kind of open it up and you get to dive in, or it's a Mary Poppins movie where it all just kind of comes to life. If you allow it to, the book will walk you through this really beautiful, majestic, divine experience if you relax into it, right? Like what Karen was touching on before the break is so powerful in the sense that if you can follow the traditional linearity kind of restricted viewpoints of the world that make us feel safe and secure, then that's what you're going to see. For some of us, we're not able to do that. For others, we choose not to do that. But regardless of how you're brought to it, if you're not interested in experiencing this world, then you simply won't. And nothing can change for you if you insist upon staring at something and calling it the same thing you've always called it and thinking about it in the same way you've always thought about it. Then there's really no room for growth or expansion in that. But what Karen encourages us and invites us into is to look at the intricacies and the interweaving, to take a much broader perspective. And Karen, whether you were consciously aware of it or not, your experience embodied this expansive kind of looking at it through God's eyes type of perspective. What was the most fascinating thing that you discovered along that journey?
You know what? I think it's the thing that's it's the one thing that's so obvious, but it is not for most people. And it wasn't until I figured it out with the elements why so many people miss it, and even scientists miss it. It's, when they talk about God being one thing, I always thought to myself, how could that possibly be? And how is it that he's everywhere and in everything? How is he the living water? And how is he, the light in the world? So when you start looking at what actually makes condensed matter, it's water, particles, and light. And what's interesting, the only difference between any of them is the difference in their packing, means the density of it. So they're basically one substance in different phases. And when you realize that, you go, oh, and then you realize, when you see a lot of things where you see a Godhead and you see a triangle behind it, it is because that is the recycling system for the elements. And we think, well, what makes water? It's hydrogen and oxygen. It's the same thing. It's just recycling. So if you look at something as simple as a volcano, you will see that in the middle of the gases, at the top is the lightning, which is bringing water down, and what happens at the bottom of the volcano is an aquifer. And you begin to see that this is a recycling system. This basic things, we have gas planets, we have water planets, and we got our fire planets, right? So when we start looking at things even under a microscope, you will see that water holds the memory. The air, which is the spirit that we speak with, or is the oxygen, the geometry that we give form to life. And the fire is the desire, it's the neural network that you see in your brain or out of space. And then you begin to see some of the Hermetic principles, as above, so below, so within. So the magical part for me was when I began to look at things ever so simply. And you could walk down a street, and all of a sudden, if you look at a tree and you look at its structure, it's the same structure, what they call a dendritical structure, like the veins you see. It's the same shape as your hand, and its way it distributes is the same way as your hand. Or if you're in an airplane looking down at a water, you begin to see that all of the elements are doing the same dance in the same geometry, in the same formation, and even the things that make life themselves that we look at from a scientific point of view, whether it's a platonic solid, a fractal, or the beginning of any chemistry starts with the geometry of a triangle. So everything is built on these same base elements. So we always want to say that we're all so different and it's all so complicated, but at the end of the day, the only thing that makes the difference between a you and a me is our stories.
That's what Justin says all the time. There's only so many ways you can put together a human.
Yep, it's true, and we still have all the base elements, do we not? We're still a 5-star triangle made out of triangles, isn't it?
Well, and for those of you that are totally lit up by this concept and you're tracking and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, like that's what this book does, is it gives you an opportunity to see the things that you know to be true. For those of you who aren't tracking and are like, gosh, I want that kind of, I want to see it, right? I want to be able to walk the world and see. It's like, the experience that I have is it's kind of like, of course, we're kind of geeked out on this whole superhero stuff. So if you imagine, there's a scene in Iron Man, I don't remember which one, 2 or 3, where he takes this imagery and kind of pulls it up and he can see everything holographically, and it's up and he's able to go, brrr, and kind of separate it out. Or like on Doctor Strange, where you see the imagery kind of take a dimensionality to it. And that's my experience of the world as I walk through it, or as I look into people when they have asked me to, or whatever the case may be. It's like, that's how I see dimensionality. That's how I'm able to see it, is because I can start seeing all of the various kind of pathways. And when you walk the world, you really can see it, but you have to start with even opening up to the potentiality that it's possible. And that's what Karen's book does for all of us, is it whether where you're at on your journey, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you have even the remotest like aspect of you that wants to papa this as being elementary, understand what we're talking about, folks. Like she's talked to people who are greats in their fields, right? And so, we can name drop all day long, but this is extremely simple concepts that are incredibly complex and expansive, right? So yes, on one level, we are all the same. That's a pretty, okay, got it concept. But are you living your life that way? And I guarantee you are not, right? Because there's just so few people who can maintain that. Are we willing to let the world shift and show us all of its mysteries and its secrets, even when it threatens the basis of reality that we've gotten so comfortable in, right? I know so many people that keep claiming they want the world to change, but they're not willing to let the world change, right? And not when it threatens some aspect of us that is attached to security. And so what Karen invites us into is this: we get to see that in ourselves. And if you're willing to look at that in yourself, then you'll be able to see it in everything outside of you. And it's not as scary as aspects of us would want to make it out, right? It's certainly to hear the divine speak to you, move through you, speak through you is kind of a heady experience for the personhood, but it's the most natural state of existence when you're in it and when you've experienced it. The same is true when you start to let the world reshape itself around you and you're able to live in this world that we all secretly dream of and believe is possible. So Karen, with your magic wand, how you were able to kind of take it out of this really abstract conceptualization and into the visual, what would you say is the biggest gift in that for you and for others that you've had feedback about?
I think the biggest takeaway for me was at the end of the day, I knew that I was on this ride and I'd chosen it. I couldn't get off the ride. I'm liquid, solids, and gases, which means I'm going to recycle. And if there was parts that I did or didn't like, it was up for me to change it. Nobody else could do it for me. And there is ways and there are toolboxes, which are plenty, to make sure that when things aren't going, and we do go through cycles, we do go through the wave, that is the electromagnetic spectrum. And how do we ride the wave? So that's still that invitation to actually take those elements, because it's what we hold in the water, it's the memories and what we do with them. What we do we literally speak, and what we take in, that's something we can control. And the other thing is what we literally fire and charge through our bodies, which oftentimes makes us not well. So the thing in the book, just so people do know, as much as it's simple, there are over 60 scientists in the book. It is a thread of well-known to not known. And together, this is a compilation of how the universe works. As I said, that was my question, how does God create? And it kind of answers it for me. That doesn't mean that the journey's done. It just means I got a pretty good start. Every page, every page is I do. It's a map. I actually had this lady look at me one time who reads bodies, and she goes, "You've got the code." And I looked at her, and I hadn't even started the book, and now I knew what she meant. And it will take you through the scientific, but it will show you. And it didn't make any difference. I'm sitting there editing the book in the airport or whatever. It didn't matter what religion people were. People came over and just wanted to see what I was working on. One, it was so visual, and they said, "Oh, that's how the six senses work. Oh, that's how that works." But here's the beautiful thing. The Hermetic principle is true as above. If you look up in the starry night at sky, you will see, if you look at NASA pictures, you'll see pictures of eyes. You'll see the shape of hearts. You'll see DNA strands. You will see the human fetus. And what you'll see is the same weave happens in outer space as it happens in your inner space that makes your body. And it's the same thing that makes the plants. So when you say, is there a creator? I don't believe in anything like that. You begin to see that there is some formidable force in the world. There's only one science, and there's only one source, and we are all invited, just like we go to dinner. I'm going to go have hamburgers, or I'm going to go get Chinese food. I mean, it's all made out of the same stuff. It's just a mixture of combinations, just like our stories, right?
You heard it, folks. So you can eat pizza and call it salad. It's cool.
No, but you can have both. You can have both. No, but you can have both is what I'm saying. You don't have to have hamburgers every night. It's like life is a smorgasbord. So, instead of being fixed and not curious, be curious and find why people had their journey. Everybody's come here with a question, and I think that's the really fun part of when playing with the kids when I was younger. Everybody was, "Oh, I got to be a geologist. No, I got to be a this." And you know what? That is that person's journey, and those all should be rewarded, fulfilled, desires answered. I don't know. I just think that's what life is.
Beautiful. Well, it's definitely a decadent experience, folks. I highly encourage you go to InsideOutBook.com. Check it out. The visuals on the site are just gorgeous, but you really want to be holding this in your hand. It makes a phenomenal gift for the holidays, for the seekers in your life, for, we don't really kind of abide by the New Year's thing. We use Burning Man as our New Year reset every year, but it's regardless of where you reset for the year, where you set your intentionalities and where you craft from and visualize from. It's a great kind of starter for the year of, how do you want to shape up this oncoming time that you have here? And Yeah, I'm with Karen. Like, I'm not sure why we would limit ourselves to a singular perspective when the richness and vastness of creation is so undeniable. And Karen does such a beautiful job of illustrating that for all of you. Karen, any last little tidbits you want to share with everybody about the book before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, the one little tidbit I think that is critical. There are so many images that show you the variation in water. There are images in here people have never seen before, been donated even from what's in for royal rife in the structure of the atom, which is not seen by many people ever. And so there are things that show you how a plant, when you love it, how it shines, how the geometry of life and what you consume. It'll take you through all the elemental aspects of you. It'll show you the geometry of outer space to inner space. And for kids and for stuff, people are just blown away. So I'm just going to say I'm grateful for having been chosen for the journey and having the gift of love of art and the assembly of this masterpiece of people's work. So
well, it's so beautiful, Karen, and thank you so much for giving us that gift and for walking your path courageously. It really does take a special person to step into that and go where she's called, and to courageously stand in that, and to talk with some of these folks that you've talked with, to bring their brilliance forward and to interweave it. Even when I had imagined they weren't necessarily all too interested in interweaving it with other people's work. And so it's, to break down those walls and to find the synchronicities and to say, hey, look, I think this is okay. This beautiful harmony that exists has to be here for a reason, folks. And so, I love the pursuits. I can't wait to see what you create next. And I'm just so incredibly thrilled that you chose to play with us here at SuperPower Up Network and bring mystical science to life. So folks, you're not going to want to miss that show. Make sure that you check it out when it airs. And go get the book. Buy 10, like the gift to people, the visual experience and the depths of themselves and the world that you're going to offer them through this is incalculable. So it's cool. It's impossible that it wouldn't be well received.
Well, right now, just because my birthday's 5/5/55, I told everybody till December 5th if they wanted to get it for $55. It's cheaper online. They could.
Oh, very
so
cool.
if they go to the website now before December 5th, they'll actually there's a bonus in there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, can we extend that out a little bit? They won't hear this before the 5th.
Yeah, we can. You tell me how far out.
All right, folks. Well, why don't we say the 25th?
All right. We'll do.
We'll make sure we still have a 5 in there. So by the 25th, folks, you can take advantage of that great deal. So how do they access that deal, Karen?
They just go to the InsideOut book. I've put it up there that way.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, folks, you heard it here first. So get on there. Go take advantage. It is absolutely gorgeous. Best gift idea I can think of this season. Karen, you're a delight and you're a blessing to us all. And so thank you for walking your path and having the courage to do that, and for joining us here and telling us about the book. We appreciate it.
And thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No worries. And to all of you out there, as always, we adore you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your loyalty. Keep listening. We know you're out there. Exciting movements for the 2020 year. So stay tuned with us to find out more. And as always, go out, uncover your superpowers, and change the world. Take care, everyone.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz today.